Hello, this is Tuti Gogia. In case you're listening this voice for the very first time, you can go check out my social media handles. And this is season 5 of Stuti Speaks. And today I have a very special guest whose name is Anjali. अंजलि के साथ मैंने एक बार पहले पॉडकास्ट करा हुआ है in when she was living in Vietnam, and we talked about her journey of moving to Vietnam and how the life is in Vietnam. She has worked with many countries, many continents, with different governments on different projects for people's growth, how to questioning the norms, questioning how the things are working in society and everything. After working for a long with very good, great titles and with diplomats and with a very good educational background, she decided to quit her job and started questioning things. And for that, obviously, she's now doing a deeper research on how to decolonize the education system and much more related to that. I know there could be points, Anjali, which I'm missing right now, but I would want to take it over to you to tell us a bit about your journey, what landed you up here. Like, it's difficult because I know how fancy titles and countries work, and it's very difficult to quit those jobs because there is a society and there are parents and there are other things to tell, who like वो बोलते हैं हमारी बेटी ये कर रही है वो कर रही है, and suddenly you would say that I want to quit my job. अब and now they are like फिर ये छोड़ देगी तो क्या करेगी. I can understand all those questions. तो ठीक है, एक बारी I'll pass on it over to you. अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा और बता दो, मैंने कुछ मिस किया तो वो बता दो. And yeah, what led you here?
Thank you so much, Stuti. I think that was a very interesting introduction. It's When I start to think about it, I think right when I was out of university, I started working. Being the older child in an Indian household, was it comes with a lot of unsaid pressure. You have to do well, you have to grow. There is so much success you need to achieve, and I think that pressure was still there, but I was also kind of lucky to be able to do what I wanted to, given the family I was born into. But I don't think the pressure ever leaves you. The systems or society that you grow up with and the ideas they nourish you with, how your brains are nourished to think in a way to get a job with certain title or a government job so you feel safe, and then being a woman. So I think since the very beginning, I grew up with a lot of questions, and I wouldn't say they were answers, but I was lucky enough to find a job that could take me places, that could help me see the world. I already told you, I think when we spoke about our Vietnam journey, we talked about how I ended up in Vietnam. I ended up getting a job with an intergovernmental organization, and I thought that was my calling, that from somebody who wanted to work in the military to protect her country, I think I had found a better purpose to serve humanity, because when I moved out of India, I saw that the humanity was suffering, and maybe through education I could solve that. However, I am out of Vietnam now. I'm currently based in Spain. I worked in social impact still. But over the years, when I worked in different continents, I realized that even the education systems were so colonized that even if you are working, you're kind of serving the systems who have designed. And my questions only, they have still not led me to a direct answer, but I think they are designed in a way to support the people in power. So what we become at the end of the day are machines to produce more, to keep the people rich. Like the richest 1% still get to keep the wealth, and this is where all the GDP is coming from. The well-being is not ever included in GDP. The So yeah, I think when I continued questioning that, I moved continents, and I thought it would make things better, but in a way it made things even worse. But because when you move to global north, you see global north through this rose tinted glass, and then you realize how they were built, and you try to read more than what your textbook have taught you, more than what your society has taught you about the West, and more than worshiping West, than questioning why West is West or why global north is global north. And as you said, it was very difficult giving up the titles that made your family proud or made your parents proud. But I think it kind of freed me from being put in a box of a certain title and just doing the right things, if you know what I mean. I think that's where I say my journey was not really linear. It looked like I was just doing what I was supposed to do, like studying, doing great, moving countries, and building something for myself, and giving my younger siblings or my younger cousins a reason to be proud of or follow a certain path.
Wow.
But I think somewhere
Wow.
along the way, I realized I was just following a path I hadn't really chosen for myself, but it was designed for me ages ago. Just one that made sense to everybody else around me and me to be accepted by them that I was doing the right thing. So when I say that moving out of India changed a lot for me, it was living in the places where I didn't feel fully belong. Like, I love my country and I'm so proud to be an Indian and where I come from and how diverse we are with ideologies and with things that we can live or grow up with. But I think leaving that place also helped me or kind of forced me to sit with myself in a way I never had before. So there were a lot of shifts that I didn't see coming, and I just they were just questions increasing over time. And I think I'd always accepted what success means, what kind of life, like, being able to travel first class for work, staying in first class hotels, that was a dream life. But it stopped making sense after a certain point. So imagine, like, if that was something that was just leaving me with questions, I just felt very disconnected. That, like,
Hmm.
everything looking great on paper, the things, the titles and everything was, just amazing. But I think
Deep
now
down, you didn't feel that contentment.
the
Hmm.
I think there was still contentment. Like, I would still go to bed with contentment, but I also knew that something was missing for me. But I think giving that up, I might not be going at the very great speed, but what I do now, like whether it's writing or research or poetry, is just how I live, comes from that moment of discomfort that I felt then and how I could make it better. So I am sitting with myself to be able to answer that. And being on those systems would never really allow them, because I was taught to think a certain way, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
that's a
it's completely making sense and I can understand you. And I know कई बार हमें समझ नहीं आ रहा होता, but internally things are changing
Mhm.
and they are leading you to a purpose which is much more deep than do you think that you are here for. But anyways, before like we started the podcast, you were talking about many things like decolonizing the education system, and you are doing a research like socio-economic research. Can you tell more about that? Like, when did you start questioning the idea of success, or like obviously things were good on paper, so basically एक turning point आपको कब लगा, कब आया? You told that there was a shift, but was that some incident that pushed you, or it was very naturally happening?
Yeah, I think there was not even single incident. It was the single incident was moving to Europe. And then there were many incidents within moving to Europe. It's like we have idealized this amazing idea of Europe, of aesthetics and of beautiful holiday vacation sport, that people, when you move here as a person, you are questioned. Like, your accent is questioned, your skin color is questioned in a very subtle way. When you are like, oh, you speak great English, where do you really come from? And then made me realize, like, are we really living in the free world? So the first idea was like, when you go through like endless visa process, endless documents, just to prove that you are not going to damage things where you are going. But thing is, the Europe is a continent built by the labor of migrants. It
Mm-hmm.
the extraction happened in global south for Europe to be built. So when they question us, and then I Google, like, how many people actually apply for visas in Europe, and then I saw how much money European embassies or European governments are making by rejecting those visas. And I
Wow.
that's what I questioned. Are we really living in a free world? Like, how can my identity be described by a passport book? That, and if I'm not coming from that region, my entire existence has no value. So how privilege often come from where you are born. So it's like,
Mm, got it.
you leave us in a doom, and then you also question where we are coming from. So I think this was the main thing when I had to deal with the bureaucracy. And this happened after I had left my job. So when that happened, I realized the privilege I had working with the intergovernmental organization and having taken care of all my paperwork, my visa issues, that not everybody is privileged enough to live that life. And that's when I realized that even though I was speaking from the irritation of dealing with the bureaucracy, I was still one of the most privileged people to only acknowledge it now. And that's
Got
when
it.
it started. And then I realized I needed to understand it more. And I came across this social movement called degrowth. And this is when I think most of my questions were answered. And
Hmm.
that's when I started to understand the systems and how they are designed and what capitalism is, what economy is. And then there was no looking back after that. So that was, I think, and reading Rebecca Solnit's book, I think she talks about her book is called Not Too Late. And in this book, she says that we often mistake optimism and hope and think they are alike, but hope is not uh, hope is not something that you sit on a sofa and clutch feeling lucky. It is an axe you break doors with in case of emergency. And that's when I realized that she talks about hope in action, that you can just not sit on a sofa and just be like, oh, I hope this works out. You need to act. If we are still here, there's still a possibility that things can be fixed. I think that was my call to just go from my passive activism mode of me just working in movements or social impact, thinking I'm doing my share, to actually speaking up and taking actions so that what I was hoping or the world I was hoping to build for future generation, or it was time to act upon it. It was, I don't think we it's in a crisis that we are living right now. And we have a life beyond Instagram or the pretty things, and it's about
Yeah.
time we need to start speaking up. So they were like, there's a series of incidents. I think when you start noticing, it's never ending.
And then you retrospect and everything made perfect sense. Like it's all interconnected.
Quite
Yeah.
so, quite so. Yeah, like you don't even need to sit down with yourself. It's just answering all the questions that have
And
ever.
by the way things were happening like this throughout the time. Anyways, that was a deeper thought. But then coming back to you were talking about that we have finite planet and we cannot do like infinite things. So can you tell me more about it, like, because yeah, we were discussing it before. I want to bring it back as a topic. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, how can we present it to people so that they understand what we are talking about?
I think when I said, I think when we grow up also, it's like, it's, I also feel like it's a very feminist or not very feminist when we say Mother Earth, how we expect just women to just give, and that's why we keep taking from Earth, not questioning it. But I was just
Hmm.
thinking about it. I come from north of India, and all of us know about Chipko movement, where women literally had
Yeah.
and we never really focus on that enough, that how much human we are when we are connected to nature.
Hmm.
So one of my professors, he talked and it actually connected. I think he mentioned, like, everybody wants the lifestyle that people have in Finland. But if everybody wants that lifestyle, we need 10 planets. That's the amount of energy and resources we would need. And the capitalistic idea of producing more and building more is just consistently and continuously extracting from the planet. What we often forget is it is impossible to have infinite growth on a finite planet. And
Hmm.
still we have
Hmm.
so many people going around. It's like climate justice is just, a joy. Climate crisis are not real. Global warming is just a joy. But thing is, this is how nature respond when you keep taking. It's just how we talk about burnout when you just constantly work and not rest. And if
Hmm.
they have a saying in Spanish, which literally means that when you don't stop, your body stops you. You fall sick. And when we
Yeah.
constantly take from the I think and especially when we come from a country like India, like we love growth, we love success. Indian people or anyone in global south is hardworking because we don't know any other way. We don't have a choice. We need to work hard to survive, but we
True
have
that.
often left our own ideology of serving, like our ancestors knew there was an unsaid rule that we cannot constantly keep taking from the planet. So my family, like I come from a family of farmers, and I often sit with my dad, and they would plant, but they would harvest things, but they would leave the land to kind of uh,
Rest for a while.
yes, rest for a while and for a season, and next year they would grow something because that's them letting it be, that's how the soil gets the productivity back, and just not. But when the revolution happened where farmers didn't even have the choice of the seeds they could use to grow, like they were told what seeds to use and fertilizers came in, so whatever we are eating is just like we have ignored. We are just using the planet for production as a machine, but planet is not a machine. And we these days I think we are not paying enough attention to that. And I feel like if we read and if we listen to our ancestors, they always told us that how it is something that we need to give the care back. It was an unsaid rule. Earth takes care of us and we take care of the earth. And now we are just taking, we have forgotten to give. It's how women do unpaid work. Like Mother Earth is doing that unpaid work where she doesn't get the care work.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting when I think about it, but
Quite
well.
interesting to deep dive into that. But
Mm,
when we are talking, you were talking one more thing, which is unlearning. Like
mm,
unlearning to learn more, or maybe otherwise like learn to unlearn, because anyways both are kind of interconnected. So what
mhm.
do you think we as uh, a human species need to unlearn to deep dive and understand and start questioning the basics? So what exactly are like, what do you think about that?
I think unlearning is a very very long journey. It's I don't think, and also I just want to make it very clear because when you start, people are like, so what do we do? Reject everything now? So I think
Yeah.
the first thought I would say is unlearning is not about rejecting everything. I think it's more about being conscious and mindful. It's not about like pausing long enough to ask where it came from, for example. It's like there was my one of my brothers told me these things. Is like I hate to waste food, but he's like, but your body is not something. It's not a bin. Like you can't keep eating if your body is not ready to accept more food. So when you are not leaving it, you are kind of using your body as a bin, right? So I think it's just about being mindful about what goes into you or what goes into the ideology or your mind or whatever you are learning. So I think a lot of what we believe about life or success or growth or happiness, let's say, it's isn't something we choose consciously these days. Like just because our neighbor asks how much you earn, we think that, oh, we want a higher salary because our neighbor didn't think this was enough. We buy a new car because somebody else bought it. We buy a house so we could show people. So it's, do we ever sit down to ask if our house currently is enough, or do we just buy because somebody else has bought, right? Like this, I'm being very specific to the society we come from here. So I think unlearning is the process where we question, like, do I actually believe in this? Like, do I want to do this, or was I just taught to? Am I just being influenced by others? And it's very uncomfortable because then you realize that most of the times it's not what you want, and you realize how much of your life has been shaped by like expectations you never agreed to. And but I think what when I think for me it was more important because it kind of helped me realize that this was my opportunity to choose again for myself and what I do. So it's better late
Mhm.
than never. So I think
Never.
unlearning is not erasing what's in your mind, but questioning and being more conscious of what is happening around you.
So
If that, yeah.
yeah. Hmm. So, थोड़ा सा I have ADHD and things keep on coming here. Then you told me that you do poetry also. Also, I've seen that on Instagram as well. So how did that started coming in? Like, was that where you started feeling freedom of expression, which you were not, which like the question that were coming, and that's how things started pouring in?
I think it's this. I still question where it came from, but I think deep down I know. I have always been this action thriller girl. Like poetry was something for somebody very emotional, or even though I'm very empathetic, like I've more been of a doer, an action oriented girl. So I I have read poetry or prose here and there, but I don't remember even buying or thinking of even buy a poetry book, let's say. And I have been writing for a long time. I have been writing for almost 2 decades, for as long as I've known, like, be it reflective journaling or diary. But then I used to do travel writing. But the poetry was something very unexpected. It happened while I was doing my studies in degrowth. It was so overwhelming. Like everything I was learning about the systems and about the planet, like I think it has left me scarred for life. And there was
Oh
so
my
much
God.
to, like eh, the, you read and then you realize like you
Mm.
want to share it, but then you're like there's probably more, but thing is you will never know enough, right?
Enough.
And
True, true, true.
that
Hmm.
was surprising. It was only like less than 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago maybe, when I was doing this masters, and there was so much data to understand from, and it was all making sense. But I realized that while I had so much knowledge, while I knew, because the academic world or the traditional academia is so structured that we only have the freedom that we call to know, but we have no freedom to feel. So I was learning so much, but there was no place to express what I was feeling. There was
That's
no, and
true.
numbers didn't help. I have never been a numbers girl, but I have been a facts girl, but none of that was helping me feel or that cope up with that overwhelmingness. And that is when I questioned that if what our academia offers, what traditional education system offer are enough. Because it's in a world like where we live, I think art should be considered a valid way of knowledge
God.
sharing. That's when I was like, why don't we use storytelling? Because this is where people get to feel.
So
So,
true.
so this is when poetry happened to me. I submitted a poem for one of my assignment, and I got a very positive feedback from my professor. And I think that's when it hit me that if more people in academia were open to it, and also like we say that academia, like, oh, education is accessible or inclusive, but there are so many people who cannot process stats as much as they process stories. So how inclusive are we when we just expect learners to understand things by a 40 pages research paper or a policy paper? Like, how accessible or how inclusive are we when we keep saying? And I think most of this information is behind the paywall. So all this work that is done for the people who need it the most never get to read this because they cannot understand the language academia uses. So this is when poetry happened to me as a way of expanding knowledge, or as a way of, expansion of academia to share stories, using storytelling as a way of knowledge sharing. And this is when I started writing poetry. I think more of like need of the hour, but it just came naturally
But
in that.
naturally.
Yeah.
And I'm so much waiting for maybe a book to release to read that poetry. Let's hope for the best. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Hopefully
But great.
soon.
So, but we were talking about education, and there are many things you talk. But why do you think that now people feel lost? They are not sure what they want to do, how they want to express, how creative they can go. I mean, I know less. There could be lesser people also, like Gen Z could be might be more creative or expressing, but yeah, there are still so many young people who feel lost that they don't know what they want to do. They're still running behind titles or something like those.
Yeah, I think sometimes like it's not even like, let's say you said Gen Zs are more expressive, but thing is sometimes they don't have the
Hmm.
choice to, like, most people, let's say, do not have the,
Ah,
most people with with wanting to do the right thing do not have the choice to choose between right and survival. You know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
think we are
True,
just so overwhelmed
true,
with
true, so
direction,
true.
but so disconnected from ourselves that we are constantly like, we need to do this, we need this package, we need to study this. Now, like the pressure of knowing how AI works is so much currently that nobody is even
Hmm.
trying to understand how much impact AI has on our climate. You know what I mean? So like the pressure that we have of building or achieving, but nobody really teaches us how to understand what we feel like. We don't really have that as a part of education. How do we know ourselves? How do we deal with our emotions? So I think we end up with this generation that knows how to function, but we don't always know how to feel or even express what they want. So I think there's this pressure of just go forward, but nobody tells you to stop and pause and look around. So you are just becoming very individualistic or just like what I want, but
Hmm.
we leave the relationships, we forget the community. And we never because like if we never stop, we never really check in if we are moving in the right direction. We just keep moving because that's what we think is the right thing to do.
So true, so true. I hope, I mean, people see examples of people like you by their expression, by their stories, and can find their way out. But still, I feel somewhere everybody has their own journey, no matter how much we try to make them understand. They learn with, अगर कोई आपको भी शायद 5-6 साल पहले बोलता, you might not have understood. You understand it now in much better ways. So I think that's a journey which everybody has to take by their own.
Totally, totally. No,
Mm.
I couldn't agree more. And
Totally
it's
okay.
also like as long as we question what's around us, we are able to answer who we are and what we want. Just, you know.
Exactly, exactly. So true, so true. So, anyways, we are towards the end of the podcast, Anjali. First of all, it's really always nice to get a perspective from you because you have, I think, a very wholesome approach towards everything. Plus, you are quite well traveled and well read. So, it's always good to have something from you. But yeah, as I was saying, we are moving towards the end of the podcast. Anything you want to share as a highlight from your researches or whatever you're doing, which can help people, especially young people, was understanding the concept of questioning things or digging deep into social norms which are being very easily, I mean, plated to us, and so that we don't question them. So yep,
No,
anything you want to say as your last notes?
no, totally. Thank you so much, Suti. And I totally agree when you say, like, everybody has their own path to travel, and there's no denying. We always understand things better when we are living them, and embodied knowledge over textbook and degrees is so, so important. But I think as youth, and especially in India, like we have so much power, but the systems have just pressured us into clearing the systemic, let's say government job exams, that we are just in a very different direction where we could be standing up for our country, where we could be helping our country be what is it supposed to be. We could serve our country, but we are just directed in such a different way, and the pressure of life and survival. I hope that us as youth, we need to question the idea that there's only one way to live a meaningful life, that there's a life beyond capital. There's so that we get back to where we used to enjoy our communities, where we used to connect with nature and our people. And there's just so much pressure, as I said, to follow a certain path. So to be successful in a way that's visible, measurable, and socially accepted, that we lose ourselves. So I hope that in that process, we often, when we lose touch with what actually matters to us, I think we become very good at building lives that look good, but not always ones that feel
Hmm.
good. So
Feel good.
I don't think I have any words, but I hope you stop to question that who are we doing all this for? And I think that would help us answer a lot of things.
No. Yeah. I also say this one thing, don't do things because you have to, do things because you want to. And जब वो have to आने लग जाता है ना तो थोड़ा सा इसका मतलब the mind and the soul and body are not in sync. So yeah, I completely agree with what you say, है ना?
Yeah, and I,
So
I hope we
yeah.
are able to make that courageous decision. It's never going to be easy. Again, I said, like, we don't come from a life that allows us to choose who we want to be. because the pressure of survival is that sometimes
Survival is
we
to
have to pick our battles.
take
So I
over.
hope we are courageous enough to question the systems or questions the actions of like our own actions to be able to answer ourselves if we want to continue with that and why. So
Thank you so much, Anjali. Thanks a lot for giving me your time. I'm so always happy to talk to you, and
same
I
here.
hope I'll see you back someday again in some other season. Thank you. Have a good
And
day, and listeners, stay happy, stay blessed, and most importantly, stay grateful. I will see you. I will see you another one. Bye.
bye, thank you so much.